This is a 2003 Cadillac CTS. This car has 170,000 miles on it. It has had the belt changed maybe once. You're supposed to do it every 100,000 miles or 8 years. So we have a 15-year-old car here. It's got 170,000 miles. I'm not sure if anybody's ever changed the belt. So I dove into it. I went to tradebit.com, downloaded the service manual for about 20 bucks. At this point in the project, I want to give credit to the YouTube channel Nthefastlane. Without their help, I wouldn't have been able to do the project at all. So go to changing timing belt for a CTS and see what they did. The first thing to change here is the water pump. The pump at the top was what was on the car. The pump at the bottom is the OEM pump that I ordered. Notice the OEM pump is die cast versus stamped metal for the impeller. I cleaned the area on the surface of the aluminum block with a buffing disc and air tool. Here is a shot of my jig for removing the bolt on the end of the crankshaft. It was made from some scrap around the shop. It is a 1/4 inch thick steel boxing with 1/4 inch thick steel plates welded on. The back side of the boxing is resting against the alternator pulley. I made a template of the crank pulley bolt pattern and made holes for the 6 crank pulley bolts in the plate, with a hole in the center that was large enough to insert the Torx socket over the end of the Torx head crank pulley bolt. Here, the breaker bar is in place. The boxing is resting against the alternator. I have a hose clamp on the shaft of the breaker bar holding a large washer in place. The large washer keeps my 1.5 inch pipe from sliding down the shaft of the breaker bar. This is so I can insert a long round steel bar for applying maximum torque. If you choose to try an impact wrench, it will need to be rated at 1,400 pound-feet of torque. I didn't want to invest the money for a one-time use, so I improvised. Here, I am in the process of changing the oil pump. The engine has been lifted, the maximum amount allowable, and the oil pump has been unbolted. And by design, the pan cannot be removed because of clearance limitations without dropping the subframe and the engine. Also, I have replaced the thermostat housing and extension pipe for the radiator hose. I have removed the old alternator and unmounted the power steering pump. The camshaft pulleys have also been removed in order to replace the oil seals on the front of the camshafts. Now, a few video clips about replacing the oil pump. You could probably just replace the crankshaft seal in the oil pump to save a lot of time and money for the oil pump and a lot of time. The oil pump I came up with was hard to find, and it was about $500 by the time I got one. And they say in the manual that if you're in here, it'd probably be a smart idea then to change the oil pump. And that is right down here. This whole housing comes off past the crankshaft. The pump is connected to an oil pan pickup. tube that goes into the oil pan. And that comes down to looking at this little space between the pan and the engine block. I've raised the engine as far as you can go and taken the one bolt out right up here. There's this other bolt on the other side of the flange, and that's why the service manual says you need to take the drop the whole cradle of the engine, front frame, and get the oil pan off and then access that. Well, I didn't think I wanted to do that. So I came up with an alternative. It was very close. It's a torque socket. And I'll show you my wrench that I came up with for my torque socket. This is my magic little tool to mount my torque socket. I took a 1/2-inch bolt and squared it off with my die grinder and file to where it's 3/8 for my 3/8 drive. And it took a strap of iron, has a hole in it like that, put it on my hole and filled it in with welding on the back side. And I ground it down to where we can actually get to that Torx bolt. So what I do is I put a piece of black tape over the top of my square drive, and then I can put the socket right over the black tape, and push that down. My socket sitting on my piece of flat stock with the 3/8 square stud welded onto it. So let's see how this thing fits on our little Torx bolt just under the oil pump. You can just kind of see that bolt, and here we go. And there it turns. It's not a heck of a lot of torque on that thing, but you can get in there and actually turn it. So you don't have to take the engine out to change the oil pump on this CTS. The thing you find out is, yes, the seal on the crankshaft has been leaking, and so you get a nice bunch of gunky oil down the front of the oil pan, down the transmission cooling lines on that side of the engine. So, yep, you replace the seal where it goes through the oil pump, things like that. But at least you can get there and get that last bolt out so you can take the oil pump off and replace it. So, that's what I came up with. Hope you have good luck with yours. Here is a view with the oil pump removed. The new oil pump will need a new O-ring for the oil pickup tube. Be careful that the two bolts in the pickup tube flange so they don't fall into the oil pan. I got by with it, being careful, but if a bolt does drop into the aluminum oil pan, it should be possible to retrieve the bolt with a magnetic stick, because the bolt is magnetic, ferromagnetic. There is no gasket for the oil pan though. Just use high-grade gasket maker with maximum oil resistance. Here I have the new oil pump and new alternator installed. I just figured I'd replace an alternator while it was convenient and save time and or labor down the road. Here I've placed the camshaft oil seals and installed the camshaft pulleys. I also installed new timing belt pulleys. You can see the placement of a blue timing belt jam to hold the belt in place on the crank pulley. Also, there is a green camshaft pulley locking tool on the driver's side cams. There's normally a red locking tool for the passenger side cams, but they were off by 1 tooth in timing. So I had to remove it to get the timing marks all lined up. Here are the passenger side camshaft marks, timing marks at cylinder number 1, top dead center. The yellow marks are for the 3.2 liter version, and the white marks on the belt are for the 2.8 liter version. Both these are the exhaust cam marks here. Here are the intake marks in perfect alignment. Here is the driver's side intake cam timing marks in alignment. Here is the driver's side exhaust cam timing marks in alignment. And here is the driver's side camshaft timing check tool in place. Perfect. Here are the passenger side camshafts with the alignment tool in place, and that's perfect too. My timing alignment tool kit was a cheap one though. I had to modify the tool with a spacer to line up the top dead center position on a consistent basis. You can see the spacer I welded in place. Everything is torqued to spec here. The cam timing belt cover is installed, as well as the power steering pump. While you are this far into the old CTS, check the camshaft cover oil seals for integrity. You do this by pulling out the spark plug coil packs. You don't want to see oil in the spark plug wells. This one is the passenger side with the rear plug completely submerged. The driver's side coil pack is removed here. Notice the center plug well is starting to show oil invasion, while the rear one, yes, is full of oil. Here are the coil packs. Oily. Also, the oil addition cap and neck from the driver's side camshaft cover. Replace them with the improved version. The reason the oil gaskets in the camshaft covers failed is because of the PCV system, positive crankcase ventilation. The crankcase gases build pressure to the point of blowing oil past the seals, and then it fills your spark plug wells with oil. There is a GM service bulletin from April 7th of 2005, numbered 0506010007A. It is a downloadable PDF file, the one that was mentioned by Nthefastlane on their YouTube channel. I have here replaced the PCV valve body at the rear of the passenger side cylinder head. There are hoses coming out of it which go to the air intake plenum for fresh air. I replaced these hoses with generic hoses, but use the core of the special tube assembly that you can't get anymore. I used the core, which was hard and still usable, so I shoved my hoses over the Y at the top of that tube core. So I replaced all the hard to get to parts around the vacuum and PCV system. Do it while you're there, because it takes a lot of labor to get to that point. Part of the PCV update bulletin is to replace plenum parts for the fresh air to the PCV system. And it says their holes need to be bored out from 1 millimeter to 5/32. And the kit supplies the unique rubber gasket that you see here. Otherwise you probably won't find it. So here's the final result. There is a new cover on top of the air intake plenum from the PCV kit, which has new plastic pipes inside. What I have not shown though is replacing the intake manifold gaskets as well as the runners to the intake of the engine in between the cylinder heads. So do that while you're there too. So I wanted my CTS to be somewhat bulletproof when I got done. So I replaced the auxiliary water pump on the passenger side of the cylinder head, and I also replaced the coolant pipes, coolant bypass solenoids, and the engine radiator. There are reports of the transmission cooling line in the radiator failing and putting coolant in the automatic transmission and getting automatic transmission fluid into the radiator, and you do not want that. Also, you can check your rear axles to see if they're leaking at your differential, because you might want to change that too. Otherwise, that's what I did. I've got about $4,000 worth of parts tied up in the car, which is about as much worth as which is about the value of the car itself, but it's going to be better than any car you can buy for that price. It's fun to drive, so if you got the time and a little bit of money, you could take shortcuts and just replace the belt and the seals and make it run. But you better check your PCV system or it'll be making trouble all the way. So do it right and you'll have a good car. Alright, have fun while you're at it. Bye.